Her sister's laugh cut sharper than the crystal glasses on the table. Still doing the dumpster thing. She sneered while their mother's friends smirked. But moments later, a well-known guest glanced at her plate, then asked the question that froze the room. What's the owner doing dining with the guests? This isn't just dinner, it's the night one woman quietly turned humiliation into power. What would you have done in her place? The text from my mother read like a corporate memo. Free Oct 13, 7 p.m. Hearth and Vine. Dress nice. No hello. No hope you're well. Just orders sent to the owner of the place. The message glowed against the glass wall of my office, a quiet interruption in the low hum of work around me. Sunlight spilled across the recycled wood conference table, picking up warm flecks in its grain the same way I imagined the chandeliers at Hearth and Vine would catch the cut of crystal glasses tomorrow night. I'd signed away a month's profit for those chandeliers, choosing them over the cheaper, safer option, because I knew they'd make people sit up a little straighter. Soon they would reveal more than just good table manners. I turned back to the meeting notes in front of me. GreenCycle's senior team was finishing up a review of our newest pilot program, partnering with 3 neighborhood restaurants to implement our closed-loop composting model. Samples of rich, dark soil from last week's run sat in glass jars on the counter, labeled with neat tags. The scent was faint, but clean like rain on slate. Across the table, Mina, my operations manager, tapped her tablet. Your TEDx talk hit 500,000 views this morning, she said, smiling as if testing the water. That's great. I replied, already jotting down a list of equipment upgrades for our next expansion. Let's keep the focus on the rollout. Did the Lincoln Park location confirm their bin delivery? She nodded, slightly deflated but understanding. I wasn't in the mood for applause, not today. Success in my experience had a short shelf life in the wrong company. When the meeting ended, I sat alone for a moment, letting the stillness settle. The text was still open on my phone. My mother's choice of venue was a masterpiece of irony. My family had booked a Michelin-starred eco-luxury restaurant for Chloe's engagement dinner, believing it to be an emblem of status and taste, never realizing it was my flagship. I could picture the table, already Chloe in a designer dress, Grant at her side, our parents presiding like dignitaries. I could hear the undercurrent of polite laughter, the toasts designed to reinforce their version of the family story. The same people who once laughed outright when I left my corporate job to start a waste management side hustle would be clinking glasses under my roof. I leaned back, letting the irony stretch out until it felt almost comfortable. Then I picked up the phone and called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice crisp. Evening, boss. I'll be at the Collins party tomorrow night, I said. As a guest. No special treatment, no slip-ups. Pretend I'm any other booking until I say otherwise. There was a beat of silence, then the hint of a smile in his voice. Understood. I'll make sure the staff are briefed. And Ethan, keep the autumn tasting menu. The roasted pumpkin and wild mushroom will do nicely. Of course. After we hung up, I shut down my computer and crossed the quiet office to the elevator. The ride to my apartment felt longer than usual. Outside, the wind carried the sharp edge of October, tugging at coats and hair, rushing pedestrians toward someplace warm. My apartment was minimalist by design. White walls, polished concrete floors, a handful of pieces I'd chosen for comfort and quality, rather than to impress. In the bedroom, I opened the wardrobe and let my hand drift over the fabrics. Silks, cottons, wools. Somewhere between them was the version of me I wanted to present tomorrow, understated, precise, with no hint of performance. I paused over a simple black wrap dress. It wasn't the most expensive thing I owned, but it fit like it was cut for me, the fabric falling just right at the waist. It didn't ask for attention, which meant it would command it when I chose. As I lifted it from the hanger, a memory flickered, Chloe wrinkling her nose years ago, telling me I smelled like compost after a day in the field. My father's disinterested shrug. My mother's smirk as she poured herself another glass of wine. I'd swallowed my pride then, knowing I'd need it for later. Tomorrow was later. She selects a simple black wrap dress from her wardrobe. Under her breath, let's see what the chandelier chooses to shine on tomorrow night. I walked through the front entrance like any other guest, the cedar scent greeting me first, my chosen signature, for anyone stepping inside to feel important. The host's smile was professional but warm as she checked the reservation. I could feel the soft pressure of eyes turning toward the doorway, strangers assessing family, already calculating. The private dining room was exactly as I had designed it, a long table of dark-stained walnut glassware, catching the light from chandeliers like prisms, a low hum of live jazz filtering in from the main floor. The room breathed refinement, but to me it smelled of blueprints, late-night supplier calls, and sawdust. From across the space, Ethan caught my eye. His subtle nod was almost imperceptible, but I read it like a cue from the wings, the curtain ready to drop whenever I chose. I crossed to the table, letting the soft click of my heels carry me into their circle. Chloe didn't stand. She let her gaze skim over the wrap dress, her lips curving just enough to be read as a smile by someone who didn't know better. "No compost smell tonight," she said. Tone feather light, but each word sharpened to a point. Laughter unspooled along the table. Some chuckles were tight and polite. Others came freely. I logged each in the quiet ledger I kept in my head: who laughed first, who looked away, who enjoyed it the most. The first course arrived: beet carpaccio with microgreens served on stoneware plates, the exact shade of autumn soil. Grant leaned in toward me, his cufflink catching the chandelier's light. Still doing the dumpster thing. His smirk was a little too practiced, the delivery tuned for an audience. "Now my dumpsters have waiting lists," I said evenly, folding my napkin into my lap. The line passed over them like steam there, then gone, leaving no visible impression. From my right, my mother's voice floated in sweet and efficient. "That tote bag you gave me, it's perfect for storing bleach bottles and gloves. Very practical." She tilted her wine glass as though admiring the color, never meeting my eyes. I glanced at the bag in my mind. Organic cotton printed with Green Cycle's motto, "It's not waste. It's the future." She had carried my work into her home without once acknowledging it. Around us, silverware chimed against porcelain. Conversations about real estate, mutual acquaintances, and upcoming galas braided together. But I could hear the undertone assessments of outfits, subtle exclusions from side discussions, the way someone's gaze slid over me to land on someone they deemed more relevant. By the second course, the air felt weighted. Every remark from my family was a pinprick. Every ripple of laughter was a reminder that the balance of power here was assumed, not earned. I focused on my fork, on the way the roasted pumpkin gave under its edge, on the sound of jazz rising and falling just beyond the door. When dessert menus were placed at the far end, I excused myself. My exit was smooth, unhurried, but my pulse ticked faster with each step toward the terrace. Outside, the October air was a blade crisp enough to cut through the heat in my chest. My phone buzzed. A notification banner lit up the screen. "Your TEDx talk has reached 500,000 views." The number felt distant, unreal, but it steadied me. The audience that mattered had already found me. The one inside this room would soon have no choice. I decided then they would speak my name before the night was over. I turned back toward the dining room. As the door opened, the warm air rushed over me again. A man at a nearby table paused mid-conversation, his gaze holding mine for a moment too long. Recognition flickered in his eyes like a match catching. "Compliments to the owner," the man says warmly. For a moment, the room thinks he's mistaken. The cutlery's delicate clink continues for a heartbeat longer, then thins into an expectant hush. The chandeliers above spill gold over the table, catching in the crystal of my glass like a spotlight waiting to shift. Thomas Reed, the most meticulous, least effusive critic in the city, is seated just one table away. His presence here is newsworthy enough. His attention on me is something else entirely. Grant lets out a short laugh, sharp enough to slice through the pause. "She deals in trash," he says, clearly entertained by his own wit. A ripple of chuckles moves along the table, the kind born from habit rather than actual amusement. Reed's gaze sharpens. Avery Collins. His voice carries in the quiet. Founder of Green Cycle Group. The room stills. Chairs stop creaking, glasses hover midair. Yes, I say, my tone even carrying just enough weight to land in every ear. And this is my flagship. A flush of movement from the corner of my vision, Ethan approaching a tray, balanced effortlessly in his hands. Desserts appear at each place setting, but mine arrives first, the server placing it with a slight bow. "Private reserve, Ms. Collins," he says, the syllables smooth but deliberate. I set down my fork and let the moment stretch. The chairs you're sitting in my choice. The lighting mine. The chef's tasting sequence, the local sourcing, the composting system that keeps our waste close to zero mine. Every decision you've enjoyed tonight passed through my hands first. My mother's glass trembles faintly as she sets it down. Chloe's smirk, that constant ornament on her face, begins to flatten. Reed watches with an expression caught between fascination and satisfaction, as though a puzzle has clicked into place. A voice calls from farther down the table, some acquaintance of Chloe's. "What's the owner doing dining with guests? Ethan doesn't miss a beat. She wanted to keep it low-key," he says with the perfect blend of discretion and pride. The air in the room has changed thicker, quieter, as if everyone has just realized they've been standing on the wrong side of a one-way mirror. I take my time finishing the last bite of dessert, the flavor-rich familiar and entirely mine. When the plates are cleared, I request the bill. The folio arrives discreet and leather-bound, but when I open it, the notation at the top is visible to anyone looking closely. Owner's house account, HV01. I sign without hesitation, the pen moving with the calm of someone who has already decided how this will end. In the folio on thick cream-colored stationery, I've written a single line for the next generation: make space at the table. I slide the folder back to the server, then lift my gaze to meet my mother's. I didn't need to stay to watch them read the folio. I knew the note would land like a gavel. Justice written on house stationery. By morning, the scene was replaying elsewhere under a harsher kind of light. In the Collins family townhouse kitchen, Patricia stood at the marble island in her silk robe, folio in hand. The leather was immaculate, but the moment she opened it, the room seemed to stop. Richard for once looked up from his phone. Chloe, hair pulled into a loose bun, leaned forward. The owner's house account, HV001, was right there, unmissable. Below it, in looping black ink, for the next generation, make space at the table. Patricia's lips pressed into a line so fine it almost vanished. Chloe's eyes flicked toward her fiancé's name on her phone screen, then back to the page as though she were calculating something far less romantic than wedding seating charts. Patricia closed the folio with care as though preserving the crime scene. Then, in a gesture that told me she understood more than she'd ever admit, she dropped it into the stainless steel trash bin. For a woman who measured her worth in what could be displayed, discarding something so deliberately was a statement, though perhaps not the one she intended. At GreenCycle HQ, the war room hummed with quiet Saturday energy staff in jeans screens filled with logistics dashboards and compost yield graphs. I had parked myself in the corner with a mug of coffee, half listening as Ethan recounted the aftermath from the front-of-house perspective. "They didn't linger," he said. Dessert barely cleared before they left. "Your mother's hand shook when she signed the guest book." He smiled faintly. Kitchen staff took notice. I only nodded, checking the time. At 11:23 a.m., my phone pinged with an alert I'd set for Thomas Reed's feed. His post was spare a photo of our autumn dessert flight, captioned, "Private reserve at a quietly brilliant Michelin-starred eco-concept." Ownership with vision. No tag, no grand reveal, but GreenCycle was mentioned in passing enough to draw a curious thread of comments. By noon, it was winding its way through food blogs, then into the hands of people who paid attention to such things. Somewhere else in the city, Grant's Saturday was unraveling. I pictured him at his desk, blinds half-closed, phone vibrating without pause. One message from a partner at MSS stood out in my imagination. Press pause potential conflict optics, re-GreenCycle. Need clarity. By early evening, the call came in the kind that shifts the weight in a room. MSS's risk committee was initiating a conflict of interest review on the Urban Circularity Initiative. The voice on the other end was all clipped efficiency. "We'll need your full disclosure on any personal relationships tied to competing bids." Grant, for all his practiced ease, didn't have a script for that. My own phone lit up as I was leaving the office. Unknown number. I hesitated just long enough to hear the first words before answering. "Ms. Collins, Laura Mitchell. We should talk about your brother-in-law-to-be." Laura Mitchell arrives exactly on the minute the river throwing late afternoon gold onto the cafe window. People who keep time keep promises. She spots me and lifts a hand in greeting, no small talk wasted. The cafe is narrow, the kind of place where espresso is a craft and voices carry just enough to feel intimate without being overheard. She orders black coffee, no sugar, and when she sits, I notice the clean geometry of her suit, the kind of tailoring that says she values precision as much as appearances. Her eyes take in the room, once then settle on me with a steadiness I recognize from people who make hard calls and stand by them. I watched your talk, she says after the first sip. The part about the dignity of invisible work, about how entire systems rely on labor no one sees. That line has stayed with me longer than any panel I've sat on this year. I offer a small nod. Praise is not why I'm here, but the fact that she led with the idea and not the virality tells me something about how she thinks. Outside, the river turns a deeper bronze. Inside, the little brass clock behind the counter clicks forward a polite metronome for deals that haven't been spoken yet. She places a thin leather folder on the table between us. Cards on the table, she says, as if reading my mind. MSS has an MOU with Marshall & Co. for the Urban Circularity Initiative. That MOU includes a break clause if a material conflict of interest emerges. After last weekend, my risk committee asked me to take a closer look not at you, but at the optics and the governance around the bid process. I hold her gaze. And what did you find that some people prefer the mirror to the window? She opens the folder. I'm concerned about Mr. Marshall's behavior and what it means for the project's credibility. The first page is a printout of an internal email header, crisp timestamp unforgiving, OCT 9, 2023, 10:42 a.m. Subject line shortlist revision. The body is only a sentence and a half remove green cycle from shortlist per guidance. CC procurement head 2 project analysts. There's metadata stapled behind it, routing IP message ID, the kind of breadcrumb trail that doesn't vanish when someone deletes a message. I breathe once slowly. Per guidance, I say. Whose were asking the same question? She slides the printout back into the folder, but leaves it within my sightline, a reminder that what we're discussing is not a feeling. I'm not here to litigate family dynamics. I'm here to deliver a project that stands up to public scrutiny. If the foundation is compromised, we fix the foundation. I fight the reflex to explain to tell her I never asked for protection, that I don't need it now. You won't hear me speak ill of my sister's fiancé, I say, but I won't shield misconduct either. She accepts that without the faintest shift in expression. Good, because I'm not offering charity. I'm proposing a path that keeps this initiative intact. She taps the folder. The MOU lets me exercise discretion on a pilot if the risk committee triggers a review. I'm prepared to do that. I let the words settle, measuring them for weight and angles. Define pilot. 90 days, she says. Direct with green cycle. We de-risk by proving capability on a contained scope collection, processing, reporting the works. Weekly metrics, third-party verification at 30 and 60 days, site visit at 45. If you hit the performance thresholds, we scale. If not, we part ways cleanly, and I return to the original procurement minus the conflicts. I consider the pieces in motion, truck spins, routes, staff data. Capacity is not an aspiration for us. It's a spreadsheet of assets and schedules that I know cold. We can field 4 additional collection routes immediately, I say. 2 electric compactor trucks in reserve, 1 biodigester line idle. We can bring online within 72 hours. Our Southside transfer site has space for a modular expansion. Permits are already in process. Reporting is automated, time-stamped, GPS verified. If your auditors want raw feeds, they can have them. Her mouth curves just enough to acknowledge competence without giving away approval. Good. I'll need your compliance architecture documented. We retain a copy for our files. You'll have it, I say, along with a certified copy of that email for Green Cycle's archive. Not as a weapon, as record-keeping. She sits back, weighing, then nods. That works. We pay and step out into the light, the air cooler, now the river walk thinning as commuters peel off. We fall into step, an easy rhythm of shoe leather and city. She tells me briefly about the oversight structure, how the risk committee's trigger gives her latitude to act. How even with discretion, she prefers decisions that can be defended by policy rather than personality. I describe our fleet again in more granular detail. Maintenance cycles, driver training, the way we keep contamination rates below 3% by redesigning lids and signage, so people make the right choice without thinking. I want transparency, she says. Not theater, You'll get it, I say. No ribbon cuttings until the metrics sing. She glances sideways, and for the first time, I register the hint of warmth behind her professional armor. You remind me of the line in your talk about how success isn't applause, it's infrastructure that doesn't fail at 2 a.m. Most applause happens at 7 p.m., I say. Most failures, like you said, happen when no one's looking. We reach a railing where the river throws a sheet of light back at the skyline. She stops hands lightly on the metal. One last thing. Optics aside, there's the human piece. If we proceed, you'll keep it professional, even with your sister at the table, I always have. Something resolves in her posture, a decision crossing an invisible threshold. Then here's how we proceed. My legal team drafts a pilot agreement today. I'll file the MOU notice citing the conflict clause. We schedule a joint kickoff for Monday, my auditors, your ops, my comms director, your compliance lead. No leaks, no grandstanding. We speak through results. Agreed. There's nothing left to litigate between us that the next 90 days won't answer. We seal it with a handshake. Her grip is dry, certain. As we shake hands, Laura's phone lights up. Marshall & Co.'s counsel has replied. We acknowledge your right to exercise the clause. The chess clock just started. A week later, Chloe suggests we talk like adults. I choose the venue, the small private room at Hearth and Vine with a round table. No head, no tail. The room is quiet enough to hear the faint hum of the refrigeration units through the wall. The chandelier above us hangs lower than the ones in the main dining hall, its circle of light falling evenly across the polished surface. It's deliberate, no shadows for anyone to hide and no corners for power to collect. Equality, as I've learned, is a setting, not a gift. Chloe arrives first, slipping into a seat without asking which is mine. Her perfume arrives a second ahead of her voice. You didn't have to make a scene, she says, crossing one leg over the other, the movement sharp. I didn't, I say, resting my hands on the table's edge. Truth made one. Grant comes in moments later, eyes scanning the space like a man looking for escape routes. He sits opposite Chloe, his back to the door, and adjusts his cufflinks as though they might hold the answer to whatever he's about to hear. We don't waste time. Let's talk about the business issue plainly, I say. No decorum to hide behind, no audience to play to. Chloe's jaw tightens. You've made things difficult for him. Grant made things difficult for himself, I reply, and for a project that deserved better. From my bag, I slide a folder across the table. Inside are the clean printouts, MSS's 90-day pilot agreement, the audit trail showing the October 9th email, and a copy of the MOU's conflict clause. Each document has a tab, each tab labeled in the same block handwriting I've used for inventory sheets since my first compost pickup. Grant glances at the email header but says nothing. His fingers rest on the page without moving. I'm not here to threaten, I say. I'm here to give you choices. The pilot is already in motion. 90 days to prove capability with MSS auditors and third-party verification. If you want to collaborate after that, you'll work inside the boundaries I set. What boundaries? Chloe's voice is clipped. Compliance. Fair labor. Transparent metrics. Decisions made for operational integrity, not optics. No interference in procurement processes. And no assumption that your name guarantees you a seat at any table I run. Ethan slips in with a tray, 3 glasses of water, a small bowl of seasonal olives. He places them without a word, his eyes catching mine just long enough to acknowledge the shift in temperature. Then he leaves us to it. Grant leans back the chair, creaking slightly under the change in his weight. And if we don't, then you don't, I say simply. Green cycle continues. MSS will find the right partners for their initiative with or without you. My business doesn't hinge on keeping you comfortable. I remove the signed copy of the pilot agreement from my folder, place it in front of me, and scrawl my signature again for my own files. Sliding it back into place, I meet both of their eyes. This time, the table is round. If you want a seat, earn it. No one argues. The silence that follows is its own contract. I gather my things and stand. As I step out into the hallway, Ethan is waiting near the service station. Want me to hold the room for a special guest tomorrow? He asks, one brow raised. No, I say. Leave it open, someone younger might need the space. Behind me, the door closes on the soundless room, the chandelier's even light falling on the one empty chair. Beneath the chandelier's even light, the final balance was struck not through shouting or spectacle, but by setting terms no one could twist. The quiet dismantling of deceit left those who once held the upper hand grasping at vanishing leverage. Justice, after all, is rarely loud, but it is always certain for those willing to see it through. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. And sometimes the strongest victory is simply leaving the table knowing it will never tilt against you again.